Hello board game brothers and sisters, I'm Adam Singer and welcome to another episode where I'll be letting you know of all the board games launching on Kickstarter and GameFound and also now BackerKit over the next week. If you're new to the channel, we do this every week going over all the upcoming campaigns, so if you want to stay up to date, this is definitely the place to be. Feel free to subscribe, like the video if you find it useful, and just skip to whatever chapters you like because I have all the timestamps down below. Before we get started, I do like to go over some new announcements and discoveries I just found out about over the past week, and I do have a few to go over, and these all have to do with CMON, and CMON has just announced their next Kickstarter, and this is going to be for Dune: War of Arrakis. This is going to be an asymmetric strategy game where players can either play on one side or the other as they fight to try and take control of the planet. I don't have a date for this one yet, but usually when CMON announces a campaign, it usually launches within about 2 months. So I'll cover this one in a lot more detail on the week that it launches. But that's not it for CMON because we also have some additional news that's completely separate from that Kickstarter campaign, but they just released a whole bunch of info about some upcoming Zombicide projects. So there's going to be a flip and write version of Zombicide called Zombicide Gear Up. Then they're also going to be releasing a brand new expansion for Zombicide 2nd Edition, and this one's called Rio de Janeiro. And if you know any board games with a more difficult name to say, just leave them down in a comment below. But they're also going to be adding a whole bunch of different characters through a bunch of box sets, and the first one's going to be for the boys, but there's also going to be the Dark Knight as well as Thundercats, and there's also going to be characters from Supernaturals, but I couldn't find a photo of it. And I don't think any of these are coming to Kickstarter. I think they're just going to put them up for pre-order on their website, and they'll probably show up on store shelves as well. And that's all I have for updates, but if you haven't already, make sure to go ahead and follow BoardGameCo because Alex over at BoardGameCo covers all sorts of campaigns and will give you updates throughout the life of the campaign. But at the end of every month, he also puts out a video going over all the campaigns that we know about in the following month. So definitely want to subscribe and watch that video if you're interested in knowing about campaigns further into the future. Alex and I do our own research, but then we do sync up and share our info with each other, so he does a lot to help this channel, and I want to do as much as I can to help his as well. But with all that out of the way, let's check out the campaigns. And the first campaign we have launches on July 16th, and this one's called RAIGO, and this plays 2 to 4 players and takes about 20 to 40 minutes to play. And this is a set collection battle game where players are going to be collecting different tokens, activating those tokens, and creating sets of those tokens in order to create a series of events that will hopefully help them and hurt their opponents. Each player's board is going to have 5 different spaces. There's going to be 3 body spaces and then 2 hand spaces. And at the start of each round, if players already have tokens out on their board, they'll be able to move any of the tokens that are currently on a body space onto any of the 2 hand spaces. And this is completely optional. You don't have to move the tokens around because you'll then be able to draw blindly from the tokens out in the center of the board, and then you can put them onto your board in any free space that's still available. When you take a token, you can look at it and keep it secret from the other players, and what you can do is just stand them up so that they're all facing you, so only you can see which tokens that you currently have out on your board. And then you'll be able to choose one of those tokens that you have out on one of your hand spaces, and then stack it on top of one of your stacks of tokens on these circular boards. And then after you do that, you'll be able to choose one of the tokens still out on your board, and then activate it to trigger its special ability. And there's a whole bunch of abilities that you can activate to protect your tower, attack other players' towers, or even manipulate any of the tokens that are currently in play. But the most important power token is the Thunder token, and what this does is it will activate the tallest tower that is currently in play. So if anyone at the table was to play this right now, it would activate the stack of 4 because it is the tallest tower. That player would then reveal the combo and score victory points depending on what they were able to achieve. And the game continues like this with players drawing more tokens into their board, adding them to their towers, activating tokens to affect the main player area, and then triggering their combos to score victory points. And once there's no more tiles left to play, the game ends and the player with the most victory points wins the game. And if you're interested in this game or any other, I have links to all these campaigns in the description below. And the next campaign we have is Pathfinder Revolution, and this plays 3 to 6 players and takes about 60 minutes to play, and this reimplements the game Revolution, which I will be referencing here for its images, just because I don't have any images for this newer version of the game. So just keep in mind that the new version of the game is definitely going to look a lot better than what it looks like in these photos. But this is a bidding game where players are going to be leaders of different factions trying to start a revolution in a town, and players are going to be trying to gain followers, influence areas of the town in order to gain their special abilities, and eventually just take over the town by scoring the most influence. And the game plays over a series of rounds, and at the start of the round, each player is going to be lifting up their player screen so that everybody knows exactly how many and of what type of tokens everybody else has, because that's going to allow you to gain influence in the different areas of the town. And there's 3 types of resources that players can use. They can either use force, which is worth the most influence, or they can blackmail, which is worth the second most influence, or they can use gold, which is worth the least influence. And these are all going to be represented by tokens that players are going to be putting out on their bidding board when they go to bid on the different areas of the town. And that's exactly what happens next, because all players are going to put their screens back into place, and then they'll be able to issue their tokens anywhere that they want out onto the different areas of their bidding board, with each area corresponding to one of the towns on the main board. The catch here is that some of the towns are immune to certain types of influence, so depending on which tokens you have, you might want to pick and choose which areas are the easiest to tackle. After all players have placed their bids, you just lift up your screen, and then you're going to see which players have won each of the areas by comparing the different bids. And winning the different areas can gain you things like victory points, more influence tokens, or other benefits like modifying the bidding after reveal, or manipulating the tokens that are out on the various towns. And whoever has the most victory points at the end of the game wins the game. And the next campaign we have is launching on July 19th, and this one's called Star Realms Rise of the Empire. And this is a campaign that I thought was launching, I believe, last week, so I already did footage for this one, so I'll just go ahead and roll that for you now. And this is a standalone prequel to the game Star Realms, which is a really popular deck building game. And this is actually one of my favorite deck building games. It's super accessible, so almost anyone can play it, but then it also has enough layers to it that I think adds enough fun and strategy, and I would much rather play this than Dominion any day. And this new version doesn't replace the original. It's actually going to be introducing some different fleets into the game. But something that's really interesting about this is that after you finish the campaign, your cards can be combined with the original game. If you haven't played any of the Star Realms released previously, it's a spaceship combat head-to-head deck builder. And in this game, you win by being the first to reduce your opponent from 50 authority down to 0. Players are going to start the game with an identical hand of starting cards, and then there's going to be a shared market out in the middle of the board that players will be able to purchase new cards from as the game goes on. On a turn, players are going to draw 5 cards into their hand, and these are going to have different attack and trade values, and you can spend those in order to attack the other player or to buy new cards from the shared market. There's also bases that you can acquire throughout the game, and if you put these into play, they will grant you a special ability as long as they are in play. But these can be destroyed, but your opponent has to direct their attack towards your base, and that's kind of nice because it means that they're not attacking you. And this new content is going to be offering a 12-game scenario campaign where each player is going to be able to alter the different cards in the shared market deck, and players will also be tracking their wins and losses throughout the entirety of the campaign. Anything about this is that you can play the campaign either competitively or cooperatively, and there's going to be 3 brand new factions added into the game: the Consortium, the Scavengers, and the Kingdom. And the different sides will be competing to achieve various objectives, earning them campaign victory points and unlocking secrets of the world around them. Definitely a solid game here that can have you playing multiple games in a single night, so I don't think the 12 scenario campaign is too overwhelming. And I'm actually really interested to see if they're going to be adding some bonus campaigns. And if you're interested to know that as well, definitely check out the campaign link in the description below where you can click to get notified. And launching on July 19th, we have the Moonrakers Big Box as well as 4 new expansions. This plays 1 to 5 players and takes about 60 to 120 minutes to play. And this is a game of deck building and negotiation. And in this game, players are playing as mercenaries, and you're trying to complete contracts in order to gain victory points and money to then gain more victory points. But the contracts that you might go up against might be too difficult for a single player to achieve, so you might want to enlist the help of the other players, and this is where the negotiation comes into play, because the players will negotiate who will contribute what and how the rewards will be split amongst them. But just keep in mind that any deals made are non-binding. But each player in this game is going to be starting with an identical deck of 10 cards and their own personal player board. And the game plays over a series of rounds where players will be taking turns essentially choosing one of 2 possible actions. And the 2 actions are to stay at your base or to attempt to fulfill a contract. And I'll just go over the easier one first, and that's to stay at your base. And if you choose to do that, you'll just gain a coin, gain a secret objective, which you can try to complete before the end of the game and earn victory points. And optionally, you can discard and replace one contract that is currently out on the table. But if you're able to, you're probably going to want to try and complete a contract because that's what's going to allow you to win the game. And when you go to complete a contract, you can just choose any of the contracts out on the table. And each contract is going to require a certain number of icons of certain types, as well as possibly requiring the players to roll hazard dice in order to complete that contract. So this contract down in the bottom left would require 4 green cards with the shield and 4 blue cards with the lightning bolt, and it would also require the players to roll 3 hazard dice. And players want to try and avoid rolling hazard dice because if you roll a hazard, it means that you could potentially lose 1 point for each hazard rolled. But there's a way to defend against that, and I'll get back to that shortly. And once you've chosen your contract and decided if you wanted to try and complete it yourself or try to negotiate some help from the other players, you'll then try to complete that contract by playing cards from your hand in order to fulfill the requirements of that card. But a neat aspect of the card play here is that you're not only playing cards from your hand to try and fulfill those requirements, but each card actually has an ability associated with it. So every time you play a card, that ability is going to get triggered. So it does matter the order that you play the cards, and you might want to chain them in a particular way. And the different cards could do different things, like allowing you to play more cards on your turn, draw more cards from your draw deck, or even defend against those hazards. So like I mentioned before, if you roll a hazard, it could potentially lose you a point, but if you're able to play a shield on your turn, then it will defend against one of those hazards. So if you rolled 3 hazards, you'll want to try and play 3 shields, whether or not the contract required it. And whether or not the contract was a success or a failure, you'll then be able to buy new cards at the end of your turn. And there's a couple cards that you can buy. You can either buy new crew members, which will get added to your deck. And these are special cards that have a special ability when you go to play them, but they can also be a requirement for some of the contracts because the crew cards do also have a special icon and color associated with them. Or instead, you could buy ship parts, which you can go ahead and add to your board, and that will give you a permanent ability that you'll have for the rest of the game. And this is a game that's been getting a lot of praise from the board game community, so it's no surprise that this one is our Discord pick of the week. But after looking into this one a little bit more, I think all this gameplay looks like a lot of fun. I really like the way that the card play works and how you get an ability with each card that you play, but then also you're going to be chaining them in such a way that's going to have a really neat puzzle as you're trying to fulfill the requirements of the contract, and then also trying to mitigate those hazards. But also getting special abilities and crew members does sound really fun to me as well, so this one is also my personal pick of the week. And this campaign will allow you to get all the previous content, but it's also going to be releasing a big box solution to store all the expansions that are also being added to the game. And there's going to be 4 different types of expansions. The first one is Binding Ties, and this is essentially going to incentivize players to work together so that you get even more rewards when you do that. So this is going to add a lot more cooperative play to your play sessions if you like to have more of that in your game. Then there's the Overload expansion, which is just going to add a whole bunch of content to your game. So there's going to be more objectives, more ship parts, more crew members, but there's also going to be some new types of contracts that will have some new requirements that were never seen before. And it'll even have some advanced action cards that will allow you to do more faster. There's also the Nomad expansion, which adds a completely new board where players will be able to explore different areas of the galaxy, and there's going to be a lot more contracts out, with the contracts being associated with different areas on the board. So depending on the type of ship parts you get and the crew members, some contracts in certain areas might be easier for you than others. This is going to allow you to seek those out by going to those specific areas in order to get those specific types of contracts. This one also introduces global effects that will affect all players. And then finally, there is the Luminor expansion, and this one is really interesting, and one of the reasons that I made this one my pick of the week, because this is actually a digital addition to the game, and it's not required to play the game by any means, but it's going to allow players to play the game either completely solo or completely cooperative against the game. The software is going to act as the world and the enemies that players are going to interact with, and there will be a little bit of a narrative campaign that it will walk the players through, and there's also some big bosses that players will have to go up against at different parts in the story. But the reason that I think this is so cool is because this is going to be offered completely for free. So if you already own the game, or if you just want to get the core game, you'll also be able to get this solo cooperative campaign mode. And that's really cool because it's just rewarding all the people that already backed the game and anyone who decides to buy it in the future, because you're going to be getting a whole new way to play the game completely free, just adding more great content to a game that already looks amazing. So if that sounds interesting to you, definitely go ahead and sign up on their website, and I'll have a link to that down below, and just leave your email there and you'll get reminded when the campaign launches. And the next campaign launching on the 19th is another exciting one, and this one is Burncycle. And this plays 1 to 4 players. It takes about 45 to 180 minutes to play. And this is going to be a reprint of the series, but it's also going to be adding a new expansion. And if you're not familiar with this game, this is a cooperative dungeon crawler where players are playing as robots rebelling against the human-run evil corporations. And you're going to be trying to make your way through the building as sneakily as possible, because anything you do will raise that threat meter. So if you're being seen by guards, accessing panels, opening doors, or doing anything like that, this can all potentially raise your threat level. And players are each going to be controlling their own robot, each with its own asymmetrical abilities, skill sets, and number of action dice that it gets to roll. But players will also be managing their power tokens, and these are really important because you're going to be using them to upgrade your action dice or unlock special abilities, but these also act as your health, so you really want to be careful with how you spend them, and you want to leave enough for yourself so that you don't run out of power and potentially lose the game. And in this game, each player is going to have their own set of action tokens that they can use to perform various actions on their turn. But then there's going to be a shared number of tokens that are in a row that represents the burn cycle. And players can also use those tokens in order to perform actions, but you're going to get a special bonus, and those actions are going to be stronger if you're able to do them in the order that they are programmed. And another neat layer on top of this is whatever physical actions you decide to do in the real world, there's going to be an effect in the digital world. So this is going to affect the network, and depending on the actions that you choose, it's going to allow you to move your token in various spots on this web and grant you special bonuses depending on where that token lands. And I really like the whole way that all of this is set up, because it creates a really fun puzzle where you're trying to use your actions in conjunction with the other player's actions, but then also trying to time your actions properly with the burn cycle to get the most out of that, but then also being aware of how this affects this network board so that you're getting the most bonuses possible to help you complete the mission. And the new Recruits expansion seems to be a pretty simple addition to the game. It's just more content that you can mix in. So it's going to add some new scenarios with some new villains for you to go up against, as well as some new bots that players can play as. And I think some of these bots will bring in some new mechanisms that you haven't seen before. And of course, if you are interested in this one, you'll definitely want to follow along with it before it launches, because if you do, you'll get this crossover equipment pack completely for free, which will give you a pack of equipment cards. Also launching on the 19th, we have Silver Coin Age of Monster Hunters, and this plays 1 to 5 players. It takes about 60 to 240 minutes to play, and this is an open world game where players will be traveling around the map and exploring its 6 different kingdoms in order to complete missions there and help each of the kingdoms with their monster problems. And this game can be played cooperatively, solo, or competitively. And an interesting aspect of this is that the lower you bid on those rows, you're going to get a larger bonus in terms of coins to start the game with. But the player who has the highest token on that auction board is going to be the one to win that character. So in this example, the yellow went first and put their token on the 3rd row, trying to get 70 coins with that character. But then the second player put their red token on the very top row, securing their position for that character because there's no row higher than that, which means that the red player is going to get that character. But because they did that, it gave the yellow player free reign to put their token wherever they want on the other character. So of course they're going to put it on the lowest row to get a bonus 100 coins. And I couldn't find a photo of this auction board anywhere other than on a YouTube video, and it just happens to be from a channel that I really like. I think all these videos are done really well on this channel, and when I watch them, I always have a really great understanding of how a game plays. So I definitely recommend checking out Gender's Gaming, and I will leave a link to that right up here. He's definitely putting a lot of work into these, and I personally find them really useful, and he often has these videos out before the campaign launches. So I think his channel is just a great place to go if you want to really understand how a game plays, even if the campaign hasn't launched. But getting back to how the actual game plays here, once you've completed the auction phase for the character, you're going to repeat that exact same thing, but you're going to be auctioning for your starting location out on the board, as well as some journey cards. And the journey cards will just have some starting resources that will go to whoever wins that card. Players will then put those starting resources and their character on their own personal player board, and there is also a knowledge track that players will be using to try and upgrade their character throughout the game. So if you ever complete a column or a row in this knowledge track, you're going to gain the permanent ability depicted in that column or row. Then the bottom of the board has 3 action tokens that will allow players to perform their actions throughout the game. And the game plays over a series of rounds starting with the prep phase, and in this phase players will choose whether they want to play cards from their hand or draw cards. And since you don't start with any cards in your hand, you're always going to be drawing cards at the start of the game, and the cards will have a kingdom and an action icon on them. And the kingdom icon is the bigger central icon here, and then the icon up here is the action that this card will allow you to perform. And you are limited to the number of action cards that you can play, but if you have matching kingdom icons on your cards, then you can play 4 actions of any type. Or if instead you match up the action icons, then you can play as many of those cards as you want, as long as the kingdom icons are different. And the different actions will allow you to do things like move around on the board, increase your reputation, which will allow more people to like you, and allow you to gain more bonuses by moving up on the reputation track. Some actions can gain you experience cubes, which you can use to manipulate your dice rolling, or instead you can use them to upgrade or improve your attacks. Our card can grant you something called flow, and these are cubes that are essentially used for combat, and depending on the character that you've chosen, they'll have access to a certain attack type. So if they can perform magical attacks, you'll be gaining the magical attack cubes, or if they perform physical attacks, then you'll be gaining the physical ones. But those aren't all the actions you can perform on your turn, because this game actually has 2 action phases, because once you've completed performing the actions on your cards, you're going to move into the main action phase where you're going to be spending those 3 action tokens out on your board and placing them onto the action spaces, either onto your board or onto the main board. And this will allow you to do different things like move and perform a location-based action, because each location has a different action that you can perform when you land there. And some of these location actions can be things like visiting markets to buy more cards, visiting the library to gain knowledge tokens to put on your knowledge track, or visit the tavern to gain quests. Each of the quests will have some combination of a monster and a location, and the monster card will have some info on it, because each of the monsters does perform better in a certain type of environment. So if that monster is in an environment that it performs well in, then it's going to be stronger and you're going to be going up against a more difficult foe. But the other thing that can also manipulate the environment is the weather, and the weather is going to be changing every single round, and monsters can do better or worse in certain weather types. So you're going to want to try and time when you attack that monster so that the weather is to your favor. And battle in this game is resolved using dice rolling, so each monster is going to have some sort of defense value. You're going to be rolling your dice trying to gain a value higher than that in order to hit the creature and inflict damage. But if you roll below that, then you are going to get hit instead and take damage from the monster. But don't forget that you can also use your experience cubes in order to reroll some of your dice, or you might have some special abilities that you can use to your advantage. And then the round ends in a cleanup phase where you're going to be removing or adding some cards to the different areas on the board, and then time's going to move forward and the weather is going to change. And at the end of the final round, the player with the most money is going to win the game, or if you're playing cooperatively, then you're going to be trying to complete a scenario, and if you're able to do that without triggering a loss, then you win the game. And if you are interested in this one, you might want to sign up on their website as well, because they're going to be doing a draw giving away a free copy of the game, so that will get you notified of the campaign launch, but it'll also get you entered into that draw. Also launching on the 19th, we have Utopia, which plays 1 to 4 players and takes about 90 to 120 minutes to play, and this is a worker placement engine building game where players are captains of a time traveling equipped ship, and players are going to be traveling back in time in order to make 3 changes to the past in order to direct the world into hopefully a brighter future or present. But in order to do this, players will be controlling a fleet of experts, and these experts can help you do things like gain resources and improve your tech. But the nice thing about time traveling is that you will be able to recruit them from all times in history, so you might see some familiar faces joining your teams. And the game's played over a series of rounds with each player taking turns putting their workers out onto the different areas of the board, and the different areas represent different moments in time, and depending on where you put your worker, you're going to be traveling to that era, and that will allow you to do different things like gain resources, hire crew to gain the skills you might need to complete different missions, or gain a tech card that you can put above one of the columns on the board, and if another player uses that column, then you're going to get a benefit for them going there. or you can go to the center of the board and gain one of the 3 mission cards that you think you might be able to attempt. And if you feel like you can complete a mission, then you're going to be going to that action space and completing that mission. And when you do that, each mission is actually double-sided, and you're going to choose the side that you want to resolve. And when you do that, you put that card out on the board as a new action spot that other players can use, and you're going to gain an immediate bonus for doing that, but then also gaining a bonus anytime another player uses that card. Then there's just a cleanup phase at the end of the round, and the game continues like this until one player completes 3 of their missions and they win the game. And if you want to know more, I have links in the description below. And launching on July 19th, we have NEXUS, the arena combat system. And this plays 2 to 4 players. It takes about 15 to 60 minutes to play. And this is a head-to-head skirmish game where each player is going to be controlling their own team of gladiators. But these aren't just regular gladiators. These are actually mindless genetic freaks. And each player is going to have some combination of skills across 3 different areas, which is their command, their influence, and their deception. And the command allows players to give their elite gladiators some special abilities, while their influence allows them to access bribes and other nefarious deeds in order to influence cards before the battle. And then your deception allows you to force your opponent into making some poor decisions. And this game also has a really interesting take on combat because it has story-driven combat where the events and cards that you play will create a bit of a story that will make each game unique from the one before. And the game offers a few different arenas to play on, with each one representing a poorly maintained space barge, each with their own hazards that you can take advantage of or avoid, as well as some loot crates to gain some extra weapons. In each round, players are going to be taking turns spending their command points in order to influence their gladiators to make certain actions, but the gladiators do have a mind of their own and they may not always listen. The team with the last gladiator standing is going to win the battle, but the player with the most fame at the end of the game wins the game. And this is a game that's already been released and a game that I think looks like a ton of fun, but this new campaign is going to be offering some new content for the game, and this is going to include pre-painted miniatures, an illustrated novel, as well as inappropriate coins, but the most impressive is the new storage solution. So this is going to offer all sorts of storage trays to store your content, but it also comes with a magnetic frame to hold and keep all your components together. This is a game that I think just looks like a ton of fun, so if you are interested in skirmish games, I definitely recommend checking this one out, and I have links in the description below. And the next campaign launching on the 19th is called Aquamarine, and this plays 1 to 100 players and takes about 20 to 30 minutes to play. And the reason this plays so many players is because this is a roll and write game where all players take their actions together. But I couldn't find too much info on this game, so I'm pretty much just going to read what's here on the Board Game Geek page, but essentially this has players navigating the sea caves, trying to seek out fish and coral in order to score victory points, and also race to be the first to reach the ocean floor. 2 dice are going to be rolled each round for all players, and then each player is going to be choosing one of those dice in order to move their diver around on their sheet. The catch here is that the lower values are normally more restricted, so most of the time you're going to want to take that higher die value, but if you do take that higher value, you're going to have to spend oxygen equal to the difference of the 2 dice. And your tank only has so much oxygen, so you're going to want to be strategic when you choose that higher die. And once the game ends, the player with the most victory points wins the game. And the next campaign, also launching on the 19th, is called Draconis Invasion Glory, and this is an expansion to the game Draconis Invasion. And if you're not familiar with this game, this is a deck building game set in a dark fantasy world where you're trying to save the world from evil monsters. And if you've played games like Dominion, I think you'll be able to jump into this game really quickly because it does share some aspects with the way that the market is all put out on the table at the start of the game. Then players are going to be choosing which cards they want to buy, deciding which ones combo with the cards that they already have, and then they're going to be building their deck in that way. The way that this game is a little bit different is that there's essentially 2 different types of cards. There's your hero cards, which is going to grant you power in order to defeat monsters and score victory points. But then there's your action cards that will allow you to do extra actions like gain more cards, or gain resources, or convert resources to other resources. You're going to have to be paying for either of these when you go to buy them from the shared market. But the catch here is that when you draw a hero card and you want to use it, you're going to have to pay that hero again in order to put them out into battle. This means that you're not only using your money to purchase cards, but also to activate the cards that are already in your hand. And the Glory expansion is going to be adding 3 modular mini expansions to the game. There's the champion cards, which add asymmetrical powers that can be summoned at moments in the game. Then there's the invocation cards that shift the entire flow of the game so that a card can be stored and then used later. And then there are the bonus cards, which will give that player some objectives to complete for endgame bonuses. And as always, if you want to follow along, I have links in the description below. And the next campaign we have is called Paleovet. This plays 2 to 4 players, takes about 30 to 60 minutes to play. And this is actually a campaign that I thought was launching a couple months back, but it got postponed and is relaunching this week. So this is a game that I've already covered, and I'll just go ahead and roll that footage for you now. And in this game, players are taking on the role of dino veterinarians, and you're going to be rolling dice to try and upgrade your hospital and treat injured and sick dinosaurs. At the start of a round, players are going to be drafting cards from a shared pool, and these cards represent the different dinos, and each one lists the icons that are needed to cure it, as well as a temporary game-changing effect that this dinosaur is going to have on the game. And these can activate at different phases in the game, whether it's when they're in the display, or when they're taken from the display, or when they're waiting in your hospital. The dino card is also going to have victory points on it that if you're able to cure it, you will get those victory points. But for the safety of your staff and the other dinos, those dinosaurs are going to be put to sleep when they're brought to your hospital. But they won't stay that way for long, because each turn you're going to be removing a sleep token from every dinosaur in your hospital. So you're going to want to move quick and try and cure these dinosaurs before they wake up. To do that, you're going to be rolling these different dice and trying to match the icons to cure the sick and injured dinosaurs in your hospital. And you're going to be also spending these icons for various upgrades to your hospital, and even buying new specialty dice to make your dice rolls even more powerful. Any cured dinosaurs will grant you victory points, but if any dinos wake up before they're cured, they're going to leave your hospital, losing that opportunity. And if they're a carnivore, you may notice that one of your other dinos mysteriously went missing as well. Play continues until all the dino cards are depleted from the center of the table, and the player with the highest score wins the game. And those are all the campaigns I have for you this week, but don't leave yet, because we have some giveaways to announce, and these are the easiest giveaways to enter ever. All you have to do is leave a comment down below, and the first giveaway we have is for a pledge for Drop Bears. And this is a cooperative game where players are campers in the forests of Australia. All you need to do is try to survive the night. So players are going to be exploring different tiles, gathering different resources, and trying to escape the drop bears. And the thing that makes this game really interesting is that you don't have any weapons, and you're going to have to make do with what you have to try and survive. Turns alternate between the players and the drop bears, and more drop bears will come onto the map throughout the game. And if players want to win, they're going to have to use their wits and work together, but also try not to get too scared, because if your character's fear level gets too high, you might result in some erratic behavior. And this giveaway is going to be for the Drop Bear Core Set Pledge, which comes with a core copy of the game and all unlocked stretch goals. And to enter this giveaway, just leave a comment down below with the hashtag bears, and let us know what creature you would rather not meet while camping in the woods. I've run into things like bears, foxes, and coyotes while in the woods, and none of them really scared me, but the one thing that does is raccoons. Those things might look cute, but they get ugly real quick. And with those little claws and those nails and their rabies-infested teeth and how they're always trying to steal my food, just keep them away from me. I wonder if we have drop raccoons in Canada. And the next giveaway we have is for Isle of Trains All Aboard, and this is an engine building game where players are trying to build out their train and complete different contracts by delivering different passengers or resources to different locations. Players will be able to play a card on their turn, but in order to do that, you're going to have to pay a cost in the form of discarding a number of your other cards. The different cards that you add to your train will grant you some additional capacity to hold resources or passengers, and they can also give you other bonuses to help you in the future. As different objectives are completed, you're going to be moving the train meeple across a train track, and once it reaches the end, that triggers the end of the game, and the player with the most victory points will win the game. And this giveaway is going to be for the Operator Pledge, which comes with a deluxe version of the game. And let's do this giveaway a little bit different. I did mention a channel earlier in this video, a channel that I think does really great work, and I think that you'll really enjoy checking it out. So what I'll do is I'll have you go over to his Moonrakers video. Moonrakers was our pick of the week in this video, so you probably want to know more about it, and he's going to do a really great job explaining it. So I'll leave a link to that video right up here, and all you have to do is leave a comment on his video. You don't have to leave a hashtag or anything like that, just leave a comment saying whatever you want, and make sure to subscribe to his channel as well and like the video if you do find his content useful. And I'll just draw the winner from the comments on this video at the end of next week. And the last giveaway we have is for Stardust Coffee, and in this game you're going to be flying your ship around the galaxy, collecting different ingredients and brewing different coffee to fulfill different orders. Each space you land on is going to have a few different options for actions to perform, and players will be using those different actions to manipulate their resources and try to brew the best coffee. And this giveaway is going to be for the Americano pledge, which comes with a core copy of the game. And to enter this giveaway, all you have to do is head over to the Discord in the description below, check out the giveaways channel, and click the little emoji underneath the post. And that'll get you entered in the giveaway, which will get automatically drawn at the end of next week. Now let's go ahead and draw the winners for last week's giveaway, and the first one we're going to draw for is Snapship Tactics. And to draw a winner, I use this fancy application here, and all these extra names down here are bonus entries for my Patreon subscribers. If you like this sort of content and you want to make all these efforts just a little bit more sustainable for me, feel free to check out the Patreon. It'll also get you some extra entries into these giveaways, which is not a bad thing. But without further ado, let's go grab those comments and see who won the pledge for Snapship's Tactics. And the winner is Will Nguyen, and this is one of our Patreon subscribers, so congratulations, Will. Just reach out to me at adam@shelfclear.com, but if I don't hear from you, I will reach out to you on Patreon. Now let's draw the winner for Mini Express. We're going to do the exact same thing here, so let's go ahead and draw those comments and draw a winner. And the winner is Taco Pizza Bob, and this is another one of our Patreon subscribers, so congratulations. Just email me at adam@shelfclear.com, or I'll reach out to you if I do not hear from you. And the last giveaway we had was for 3 pledges for Bagh Chal, which we ran over on the Discord. So if you did enter in that giveaway, make sure to check out on the Discord and see if your name was drawn. And that is everything I have for you this week. Definitely quite a few interesting campaigns. I'll definitely be taking a look at Moonrakers myself. I passed on it the first time the campaign launched. We'll see if I pass on it again. Feel free to let us know down below if there's anything that you plan to back. I've been a little bit slow on responding to my comments lately. I probably have a few thousand that I need to catch up on, so I will try to do that possibly this weekend. I do appreciate the comments, even when I'm swamped and not able to respond to them right away, but I do always try to get caught up, and I do plan to do that soon. But as always, thanks so much for tuning in, and until next time, keep that shelf cluttered and the table full. What?